We only have a couple items on our agenda, but very important items for sure. We'll get straight to it. And the first item on our agenda, our esteemed director, EMA accreditation update. So Nick, if you're here, I don't see you on the screen.
Madam President, I am going to resend his link. He's having just a little trouble getting on.
Okay, great. How's everyone today?
Good.
Good, very good. Beautiful day today.
Sure is.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, do we have, Madam President, do we have PowerPoints for the two presentations?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I know we got emails. I was going to pull them up if we don't have them sharing screen.
Right, I have mine here, but I'm pretty sure he's going to have a PowerPoint, both of them.
I'd be disappointed if Nick didn't have a PowerPoint. He has set a certain level of expectation. So.
For sure, yeah.
And he just texted me saying that he was still waiting for the link. So Bridget, I don't know if we have an issue getting him the link.
I just sent it, but I'll resend it again just to make sure it gets to me.
Okay.
Okay. And then we can move on to the next one. You get bumped real quick around here. So we'll try to wait for him if we can. It's weird because the voice is coming out to the left of me and not out of my computer, which is a little weird, but it's okay.
Do you have a different setup today?
Yeah, it's a different setup. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll close the screen for a second. Mike. I am here. I'm letting the IT guy do something for me as we wait for Nick.
Looks like he's jumping on.
Speakers.
Okay.
There he is.
Okay.
Starting to think this thing doesn't have built-in audio.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, both our options come straight out of there still.
Yeah, thank you. We're on Zoom now live. So.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
That's
Put it
you can just click it.
Yeah.
Make sure it still comes through. Have someone say something.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get started. Thank you, Mike. Nick, thank you. I just said you were an esteemed director, and so I don't know how esteemed you are. Okay, let's get started.
Are we ready to go? Sorry, I
Yeah,
haven't.
we're ready. We're waiting for you.
All right, let me get started here. Okay, first of all, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present today on our accreditation process. I know, especially Commissioner Driehaus has been hearing about this for a while, and Commissioner Summer-Dumas, you have too, and Commissioner Reese. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it in a public forum. So what is accreditation and why are we doing it? So the Emergency Management Accreditation Program is a voluntary standard assessment and accreditation process for emergency management programs in the United States and abroad. So it is an ANSI accredited standard that I'll go through here in the different pieces, and it fosters excellence and accountability by establishing credible standards applied in an external peer review accreditation process. So that's sort of the key thing here is, are we doing everything in Hamilton County to that we can do to build a robust and effective emergency management program? So there's the Ohio Revised Code, which has certain requirements. We have grant requirements that we meet. And then as sort of a overall double check, plus to seek accreditation, is we asked, we've worked toward this since 2016. It was in our strategic plan to attain accreditation by 2020. And then COVID hit. And then thankfully, anticipating accreditation in July, we're only delayed 6 months in that goal. So I'm very excited about that. So in the midst of responding to COVID, plus multiple natural events last year, we stayed on track with building our program. So there's 66 standards, and there's about 120 different sets in those standards that you have to meet. As with any standard, this is big on documentation. So not only can you document your program, but then anything you said you did, have you documented that you do it, and then you follow through on that process. So there's 66 standards broken out into about 120 different things you have to meet to be nationally accredited. The big key here is designed for continuous improvement as part of a voluntary process. So the assessment, the standards themselves continue to evolve as time goes on. So they're on a 3-year review cycle by multiple committees within the EMAP system. And then you reaccredit every 5 years. So you're always reaccrediting to the next higher standard during a review process. What does it cover? So it covers program management. So do we have the right to exist? Do we have the right to administer our program? It ensures that we have administrative finance procedures in place. So not only do we have policies and procedures established by the Board of County Commissioners, but we also have agency policy and procedures that guide these issues as well, to make sure that we have everything from how do we spend general fund dollars to grant fund dollars to how do we make our decisions when that comes along. And then the laws and authorities are in place for us to exist. It identifies and asks or reviews, have we done a hazard identification? So do we know what hazards impact Hamilton County? Have we done a risk assessment? Have we evaluated the consequence of those hazards? And do we have a hazard mitigation program, which, as you know, we have a robust hazard mitigation program. We recently updated our county-wide, so we coordinate the development of a county-wide hazard mitigation plan. We engage all of our communities and the public and our partners in the development of that plan. And having that plan approved by FEMA and the state allows us to be eligible for literally hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in hazard mitigation funds. And just as an example, having an up-to-date FEMA-approved mitigation plan made us eligible for those funds that MSD just received for the Muddy Creek buyout. And that was millions of dollars. So that's just one time that an entity in Hamilton County benefited from having a hazard mitigation plan and participating in the process. Then we also engage to the extent possible, making sure that we have our eye on preventing events, both natural and man-made. So I think when people think about prevention, they naturally think of terrorism or man-made events. But we also want to be able to prevent landslides, if you will, or wind damage, things like that. So that's all wrapped up in our hazard mitigation / prevention process. And then, as you know, and we've talked about this multiple times, we need to ensure that our operational plans and procedures, so that if a disaster happens, the county is prepared to not only support our communities and our residents, but also to work with the state and federal government. So have we developed those operational plans, our emergency operation plan? Do we have procedures in place to implement that plan, activate it, go with it during the disaster, and then deactivate it when it's over? And all of that is very incremental. Do we have procedures? How are we going to manage an incident? So do we have a scalable command staff structure within the county and the emergency operations center, so that should something happen, we have the appropriate personnel to manage an incident. And so that's something we've been working on, as you know, well, it never ends as we go along. I was just talking to Administrator Ludo a few minutes ago about that process. We also need to be sure, and so emergency management is very all-encompassing, that we have the ability to both know where our current resources are. We know how to ask for resources either from our other local governments in the region, the state, or the federal governments. We know how to manage funding so that we can purchase resources. So we have to have a resource management process in place and documented and workable. We have to have a process for mutual aid, which Ohio has an opt-in automatic mutual aid system, so that if something happens, everybody in Ohio is opted into it, and so that you can reach out and ask for assistance if needed, and that happens every day. Communities help each other every day, both within the county and from outside the county. Prime example, one of the teams we work with, the Urban Search and Rescue, the Hamilton County Urban Search and Rescue, is a team that is already made up of multiple jurisdictions, and then it both responds in Hamilton County and outside of Hamilton County. And then, of course, logistics. So how are we going to, for example, and I was recently talking to you, Commissioner Summer-Dumas, about how are we going to, for example, request and receive and distribute commodities. So like we saw in Texas, where they had to distribute water and food. So we've been working aggressively with our purchasing department. We're identifying vendors in advance. We're documenting that procedure so that when the time comes, we can receive and distribute logistics or commodities, other things to our communities and to our residents. We also, as you know, have to have a robust procedure for communications and warning. That system is used all the time, Alert Hamilton County and the outdoor warning sirens. So we have a robust, up-to-date, comprehensive communications and warning and alert system. You're more than familiar with that, but that is now a clearly documented, tracked. So basically what we do, we test all of this, we then document that, and then we fix it as we go along. We make sure that we have the facilities to do all this. So we have our primary emergency operations center here, and then we have a backup emergency operations center in partnership with Green Township. So both of those are up and operational should something happen to our main building at any time. We have a robust training program. So we work with all of our stakeholders in Hamilton County, both public and private, to identify emergency management related training. Then we develop a calendar for that, and then we implement that as we go along. So that is what we're doing with that. Part of having a training plan is not only just bringing in training, which we've done in the past, but also why are we bringing it? What gap is it filling? And what training do people need to be able to do to respond to major emergencies and disasters? And we're constantly talking to our partners about what training they might need. And then, of course, exercises, evaluations, and corrective actions. So one thing EMAP does, it ensures that you have a robust program so you can have all these plans and procedures, but if you never test them, then you can't say that you can actually implement these plans. So every time that we have an exercise or we've been in COVID for over a year, we've been activated for over a year now, we are constantly looking at, and we will do this the same thing with COVID, is how did it go during the response? What worked? What could be improved? And then we will document a corrective action that we'll be able to show you hopefully at this point in our July meeting, where we've identified actions we recommend as an agency, and then who will be responsible for maintaining those. And we've, I think we've all had lessons learned. We've moved along through this response, and we have too. So we will document that process. But this will also happen after we have a FEMA-sponsored exercise, Emergency Operations Center exercise in September, where we're engaging a good portion of the county in that exercise, and we will identify what worked and what didn't work and develop a corrective action. So this is a constant cycle, and EMAP helps us document that process. And then finally, emergency public education and information. So again, this goes back to our alert and warning, but do we have a system that takes I think we have 42 hazards identified, and do we have education and training available for each of those hazards? And we do. So we've documented that process. We've documented how we work with the media. We've documented both that interaction, how we get information, how we coordinate. So a big part of our piece, and we've seen this a lot in COVID, is trying to get everybody on the same page as far as the messaging they're putting out. So you want the federal government, or in our case, really all of our 49 communities and the county on the same page as far as information they're putting out to the public. So we've developed a robust system that seeks to help coordinate that information. So we don't tell people what to say, but we do encourage people to coordinate information so the public isn't confused. And as you know, we are able to put out information pretty quickly anytime there's an emergency. So that's sort of what it covers. So why do we get accredited? And I'm open to any questions anytime, but I've done this a lot. So why get accreditation? Well, I think it validates the county's program. So as you know, it's one thing for me to tell you we have a robust emergency management program. Now, I hope you've seen it, especially in the last year with COVID and the multiple other events we've had. But this is an outside evaluation of, are we meeting national standards with what we're trying to do? And this is sort of a way, if I can just be candid, and I know we're in a public meeting, but to evaluate my performance. So are we meeting national standards, which also include the requirements under the Ohio Revised Code of an aggressive, forward-thinking, modern emergency management program? And this allows you to see that. I sent you the draft report, and then we'll get a final report whenever we're accredited that you'll be able to see everything that they looked at. It's objective, so these assessors that come in, we don't know them, we have no influence over them. Our assessment was actually virtual. Normally it's in person. It takes a week. It took us about 8 weeks to go through the entire accreditation process virtually. But we have no control over that. So it's a great recognized experts in the field who are specially trained to do assessments, and then they come in and review your policies and procedures and your documentation and your programming. They also interviewed people during that process to make sure that we weren't just writing stuff down. It's assisted us, and I know I've worked with Missionary Ludo and many county staff and other staff outside of the county on documenting policies and procedures. So as you know, we recently last year finalized a continuity of government plan. We had never had one of those before. That's a direct outlay to, or a direct outcome of going through the EMAP process. So that should something happen to anybody in an elective office, we have a documented process for how to reconstitute those offices. We also aggressively sought, especially with Administrator Ludo's support, ensuring that we had continuity of operations plans, and that for several departments we were mostly through that process. But when we had to pivot and go remote because of COVID, continuity of operations, that is continuity of operations plan in a nutshell. And so what I've done to further that process is recommended to departments, especially under the board, that they take everything they did and make sure they write it down, because that would help you what they did going remote and how they, we updated all of our customer interaction portals. We did a lot of things in COVID that will assist you should your physical location or for some reason your employees have to be remote. I mean, you come in one day and they found asbestos in your building and you have to evacuate immediately. I mean, it could be something as small as that, or it could be a fire, or it could be a chiller going out and there's no air conditioning. So there could be any number of things. And so we documented the cost recovery process that we knew a process, but we hadn't necessarily documented it. So lots of things where we were able to take this process, show the need for it through the EMAP process, and work with the county on the development of various policies and procedures. So we have a very, very documented program at this point. And then I think, and of course, I am assuming full accreditation in July when the commission meets, because we are 100% preliminarily compliant with all the standards from the initial assessment. It's visible and tangible recognition for the agency and for Hamilton County that we have developed a robust emergency management program there is no perfect disaster response. Disasters can be very complicated. Again, COVID has shown that, I think, more than almost anything that we've dealt with in the last, my lifetime, that it shows the public that, we are doing everything we can to be as prepared as possible. It also fosters a continuous improvement of emergency management capabilities. So you're not accredited and then done. You then work annually on a annual report you provide to the EMAP Commission staff on how you're maintaining your accreditation. So it's continually keeping an eye on the ball, continually to ensuring that your program is up to snuff and making sure that you're filing those reports. It also helps us to then go to our partners and say, this is why we're exercising, this is why we're training, this is why we're planning. Again, it develops accountability of the agency to the residents of Hamilton County, to you as our elected officials. Why are you doing what you're doing? I think this gives you a good outline for that. It allows us to focus on areas and issues where resources are most needed. So in times of I know especially as elected officials, you have lots of needs and limited resources. And so what we do is we're constantly evaluating where our gaps are, where our resources are needed. And then we balance that amongst both our limited resources as well as yours as we move forward. But it helps us get that focus. It's a peer-reviewed accreditation process, like I mentioned. It's an external evaluation, and I think that's the best way to do this. So this isn't me assuring you that we're doing everything possible. We brought in an outside organization that is an ANSI accredited standard that you can then look at and hang your hat on to a lot of respects. And then, of course, it provides a national opportunity for national recognition for compliance to that. These are the only industry standards that are externally reviewed in the world. So there is one other standard, but it's just a standard put out by the National Fire Protection Association, but it has no review process. So this is why we went for the EMAP accreditation. So as you know, we've completed almost the entire process. The big thing to focus on is the program review committee, which looks at the preliminary assessment report and makes sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. They then talk to us, and then they make a recommendation to the commission. That meets by that Friday, and then we'll know by that Friday afternoon that we're accredited. Now, based on my 20 years of experience working with EMAP and current leadership position with the commission, I do anticipate accreditation. I guess something could come up, but I do anticipate, knowing their process like I do, accreditation, and then we will be accredited for 5 years. And so we will work to maintain that. And I think that's a great way for us to stay focused, because even with COVID going on this year, and my agency, as you know, had to do several pivots during the response. We worked on a lot of different stuff related to COVID. We still had to respond to multiple natural disasters that we had in Hamilton County, multiple events. We opened a PPE warehouse, moved it once, continued to operate it. We upgraded our outdoor warning sirens at the same time and touched every single siren and replaced the control panel, and yet still completed EMAP accreditation. So that's a testament both to the county's support. I know we worked with Administrator Ludo quite a bit in the administration. That's a testament to your support. And then, of course, all my staff, just all the hard work we put into it because it was so important. Finally, this is who's accredited in the United States. So this is something I'm constantly working with FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security on to get more organizations accredited. So 36 states are accredited, including Ohio, 42 local programs, 27 counties out of that. One of them is Cuyahoga. They were up for reaccreditation this year. So they were accredited right as I got here in 2015. Many federal agencies, as well as higher education institutions, and then some others. So quite a group going on there. I just wanted to add this since this is a public forum. Our website, I would be remiss if I didn't promote Alert Hamilton County. Again, I encourage all residents to sign up for emergency notification. It's quite a robust system. Also includes Smart 911. And then, of course, this is our executive committee that we work for, of which all three of you commissioners are on that. So that's accreditation in a nutshell. I'm very excited about it. I know it's kind of dry, but I'm very excited about accreditation. I think from my perspective, we put this as a goal in 2016. I always say we don't build the program to match the accreditation standards, but the standards are where you should be as a program. And I'm actually working on a program with the state to mentor other counties in Ohio to encourage them to get accredited as well. Because again, it can't hurt you to document everything. It can't hurt you to train to respond, write good plans and procedures, document everything. So that way, really your documentation also helps with just continuity of the agency. Anything happens to me, anything happens to anybody else, everything is now documented down to if you came into the Emergency Operations Center, we have a one-page, here's your checklist, so that we know that many times the emergency response part of especially major disasters is not something people do every day. So we're the only ones who do it every day. So we actually have one-pagers for everybody we work with, so that we train them, but then they have that when they walk in the Emergency Operations Center, boom, 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 here's my job, get to work. And I always say that we don't have anybody doing anything that's not in their normal purview. It's just on steroids, if you will. So that's sort of how we roll. So that's my presentation, and I'm really excited, and I hope you are too.
Yeah, thank you, Nick, so much. It's exciting. It may be dry, but it's so important for the county and the neighboring counties. So I know that your team has really, really been working. I was glad to see that once the assessment starts at the EMAP commission, they don't take very long to let you know if you're accredited, and it will look good for Hamilton County, of course. And so I was just wondering, you guys do such great things. What area did you feel like you had to work on the most to bring it up to the way that they would be acceptable for the accreditation?
Well, much like most emergency management, we all know what we need to do in a disaster. It's really just putting it down on paper.
Okay.
And so really it was the documentation piece again, again, Administrator Ludo will know what I'm talking about. We had many phone calls as I realized that certain policies need to be updated, the continuity of government plan. So it's not like the ORC doesn't lay out how that's done, but if something happened, you'd have to go searching through the ORC. We worked with the prosecutor on the development of that. So really it was the documentation piece. And that's always the toughest part for every program.
Absolutely.
Because it's knowing what to do is really the easy part. It's documenting it and getting out there and then keeping that documentation up to date.
Okay, thank you. They say if it's not written, it didn't happen, huh?
Right.
So we could be doing a lot of good work and it's not written, it doesn't matter. So Vice President Reese, did you have any questions or comments?
I just want to thank Nick. He keeps us updated, lots of emails, and he keeps us in tune. I do want to bring up one thing on COVID, because we certainly, all the work that Nick and his team is doing as it relates to on the COVID side of things. You had mentioned you mentioned FEMA and getting a grant that we were able to get. I wanted to just, now that we have passed a resolution for a mobile one-stop unit, it was brought to our attention in our hearing or presentation from Hampton University. They said there is a section in there that deals with mobile operations, and that there was opportunities, or at least they have been able to get opportunities for funding. I think they get like $54,000 possibly a week to vaccinate 200 people. And so I wanted to find out, have you seen anything from FEMA on the mobile side? I know you and I kind of briefly talked about it, about what they're offering. I know they're doing some stuff in Oakland, California as well. Is there anything that you've seen from the mobile side of COVID that we might be able to tap into as well?
So, and I've talked to Administrator Ludo at length about this. So generally, that is, my experience is locals do not work directly with FEMA. That's a state that works directly with FEMA. So oftentimes, if they've set up a deal like that, they're either A, getting reimbursed because it's a reimbursable expense, so they're tracking it and then requesting reimbursement, or B, they're working with some kind of provider, or the state has subcontracted with them and then is helping them fund their operation. That's about the best that I know. That everything we do, but we also have CARES Act funding, which, to be quite candid, FEMA reimbursement is tedious. It's very complicated, and it's hit or miss whether or not they'll agree with what you think is reimbursable. So we're fortunate here in Hamilton County, Bay, to have the partnership with the state, especially with, well, I guess you and Commissioner Driehaus have both served in the legislature, to have those relationships directly with the governor and work with ODH and Hamilton County Public Health. So that's almost the avenue I would recommend, and then asking the governor for a specific allotment of vaccine. So I would imagine they have a deal with the state, because again, a lot of times we don't work directly with FEMA for direct funding. Our deal is always on a reimbursement basis. But no, they're not specifically doing that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it is a reimbursable. You're right.
Yeah.
And that's what she had indicated at there. And maybe I don't know. She said it was in the handbook. I haven't had a chance to read it, but it's in the handbook. And Oakland, I know that my councilwoman Treva Reed, who's actually originally from Cincinnati, but is the councilwoman there, and they are heavily involved with FEMA. And she was sending me stuff as she was watching our what we were doing down here, she was sending me information. So I'll forward that over to you. You can see if it's
Yeah, I'll take a
something
look at it.
that you think, but I certainly want to, take a look at it if it's something
Mhm.
that we should do. And when you said we got a grant, I thought, wow, maybe, maybe there's something else that might be out there. I'm always trying to bring as much to the table as we can.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
thanks for your work, Nick. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thanks, Madam President. Thank you, Nick, for the presentation. I know how proud you are, and I know how proud your team is of the accreditation acknowledgement, and I share your confidence that you're going to get accredited here soon because of all the work that you've done. So I just want to applaud you and your team for sticking with it, even during a pandemic when you were pretty busy with other things, making sure that this accreditation program moved forward, because it is a real point of pride for the county to have EMA accredited in this way. So I do want to acknowledge that and all the time and work that you've put in. Related to some of the emergency supplies that you referenced, not only COVID related supplies, which I know we've got a cache in storage. What other kinds of things do you have at the warehouse, or do you anticipate putting into the warehouse in anticipation of other kinds of emergencies?
So it's actually something, and actually I've, again, talked to Administrator Ludo several times about this. And so what I'm looking at doing as we move forward, so we have a large county, and so it's really tough. I mean, we could have a warehouse full of water and it could be gone in a week. So what I'm focusing on is some basic supplies if we had to open a smaller shelter, right? Maybe a 200-person shelter, because we also partner with the Red Cross and they have an extensive system. So we're working on both having some basic supplies on hand, our basic agreements, then working with purchasing on identifying all of these sort of like Heater Meal, which is based here in Cincinnati. It's called Luxor something. They got bought out by an international corporation, but they produce these meals, an MOU with them, making sure we know where all the water vendors are should we need those. And Waterworks has an extensive actually emergency planning process. We met with them a few years ago. They're impressive, the work that they've done over at Waterworks. And so I'm looking at the basic commodities and all that. And so part of my moving forward is to, once we get to a stable place with COVID, or hopefully they declare the pandemic over, I assume, that we start focusing on that mass care piece. And that's part of my plan to bring in a new staff member to focus on that piece. I want to strengthen our relationships with the nonprofits that do so much work. You've seen just there's so many churches that want to do community-based work. I'm blanking on the Crossroads Church, for example. They do a lot of disaster response, and they're all over the county, west side, east side. So we're going to work on strengthening that. We're going to develop a base cache of ourselves, but you got to manage that. So that's always tough. And so I think it's better to do just-in-time purchasing if we need to. This happened about, Jeff, I don't know if you can remind me, right before I got, maybe in 2008, we did an emergency purchase of heater meals for Meals on Wheels.
Right.
About $25,000 quickly. So that's what we're going to focus on rather than stockpiling. But I do want to have a base of the actual, so we can have maybe a 250 to 500 person shelter if it's needed quickly. But then I'm also working with the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, and again, all these other community organizations, because that's where our force multiplier is in taking care of the public. And then what we're doing on the community side is we're also doing a lot to educate elected and appointed leaders. So we have 48 communities, 49 and 48 and a quarter, is educating them on their roles and responsibilities when it comes to their own community and disaster response. Because I feel it's important for everything from the Mad Healthies to the Green Townships to the Coal Range to whoever else to Cincinnati should be prepared to coordinate disaster response in their community. So for example, as you know, we spent a lot of time working with Cincinnati on their emergency, working with them, helping them on their emergency management program, work a lot with Colerain, Green, Anderson, all kinds of our communities. Woodlawn actually is very active. We worked a lot with Forest Park. So we're doing that on the government side. So we want to, and then of course we've still got our hope that people will be prepared, but that may be the longer haul. So that's sort of a three-pronged approach. So build up the community capacity to respond, probably have some stuff on hand, have a robust vendor list so we can do just-in-time purchasing. We've also documented that process heavily after COVID to make sure we have that documented. Working with our governments to make sure they're prepared to respond and learn from COVID and what they had to do, and then working with residents. So it's really a three-pronged approach.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. And I expect through COVID, you have been able to reinforce those relationships with all the local communities, because I know you've been a great partner when it came to distribution in particular of PPE, whether it was for a nursing home in those communities or a small business or whatever it was. They knew that you were at the ready, because we do have a supply of those kinds of things, and you were very helpful with those local communities. So again, this partnership is critically important, and I just am grateful that you stepped into that space with a lot of enthusiasm to be that county partner when folks needed it the most. So thanks for all that you do, and thank you for the presentation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Nick, we had talked about a new staff person, as you mentioned earlier, for outreach purposes. So have you hired that person yet?
No, I'm
Okay.
working with HR, so that's always the phrase, working with HR to get the position graded and things like that.
Okay,
And then we still really want to focus on what the skill base is we're looking for.
sure.
I'm to be quite candid, looking for a community outreach, social worker type. I can, as we know, I'm a former social worker. You can be taught emergency management.
Mhm.
That people skill, that's what we're looking for, and that
Mhm.
coordination skill. So
Okay,
we're going to do an extensive outreach process. We want to try to, obviously, we've had some success with diversifying our staff, but obviously we want more diversification.
Mhm.
We're going to be real focused on
Mhm.
making sure we do as much outreach as possible to get the right person into that.
Okay, great, thank you. And Jeff, would you like to say a couple words, since you guys have been working so close together?
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. No, just very quickly, I just want to thank Nick for all the work that he's done on this. I'm very supportive of accreditation in any of our departments and agencies where we can do it. And we do have some various accredited operations. I think you heard recently that our parking operations actually under Joe Feldkamp were accredited. EMA is a different animal in that, for some of these accredited operations, you can, for instance, our parking operations, you can drive in, you can see if the equipment is functioning. You can see if the areas are staffed. You can tell if the infrastructure is maintained. EMA is tricky because it's such an out of sight, out of mind function until you actually need it. And it's only at that point in time that you kind of pull the covers off and see, has this been a function that's been well maintained and kept up. And accreditation is a way of really keeping that saw sharp and making sure that you're doing everything you can to ensure that, as Nick said, you're documenting everything that needs to be done. And so when something does happen, you're proceeding on like clockwork and rote, as opposed to trying to put everything together at the time. And we all know we have a great EMA staff, and I think that's even more demonstrated by the fact that they recognize that this is something that is good to do for their own benefit, as well as the confidence of the community and the elected body as well. So no, I just appreciate Nick doing it. He's extremely conscientious in what he does and staying on top of everything, as I know you as the his executive board understand as well. I just want to thank him for everything that he's done on that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Nick, and tell your team we really appreciate what they're doing. Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to our second item on the agenda, Department of Environmental Services update, Brad Johnson. Hi, Brad, how are you?
I'm great. How about you?
We're doing great. So waiting to hear from you. What's going on?
Good. Well, first, I wanted to thank each of the commissioners for the opportunity. Kind of like Jeff was saying, out of sight, out of mind. A lot of the work we do doesn't always get recognition. And to be honest with you, that's a good thing, because if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that means that we're not making the news and those kinds of things. So this is a good opportunity for me to kind of show you how we pivoted with the pandemic and some of the great things that we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And if you could just let me know when it comes up.
Okay, it's up.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
And mine is, I have two screens. Mine's on the other screen, so I do apologize. I'll probably be looking at the other screen here as we go through. But I guess the first thing I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background on is me, because I know I've been introduced to some of you, but not all of you. So again, Brad Johnson, the director here at Environmental Services. I've been the director a little over 2 years, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because half of the time I've been here, I've had my staff with me, and half the time I've had my staff without me. So it's been certainly an interesting journey the last 2 years. And my background is prior to coming here, I worked with Greg Kesterman at Hamilton County Public Health. And, you know, Nick, going through what we all kind of laughed as dry material, I can certainly relate, because we went through the accreditation process at Public Health about 5 years ago. And it's a lot of work. It truly is. It's a lot of record keeping, reaching out to your partners and stakeholders. So Nick, I appreciate everything you're doing on that end, and we'll continue to support you how we can here. So I was there 12 years with Public Health. Prior to that, I worked in the private industry as an environmental consultant for 7 years. And the other thing I think is worth mentioning, so I knew coming here to Environmental Services, my bar was set really, really high, because if you're not aware, Assistant Administrator Chrisman was the previous director. And then Administrator Aludo, believe it or not, he came from here as well. So this is kind of the training grounds for some very high leadership roles. I joke with my family and say, I don't know if I need to run for governor after a while here, or what I need to do to to top the people who came here before me. So let me go on here. So I wanted to give a little bit of background, both for you and the public who's watching this, as to how we're structured here. So Hamilton County Environmental Services, we house two organizations. So we have the Hamilton County Recycling and Solid Waste District, which that has about 6 employees. And then we also have the Southwest Ohio Air Quality Agency. And that they have about 33. So the entire department, we have around 50 employees here. And then we also have an operations team, which kind of, makes all the things happen for both of those different organizations. And there's about 5 of those individuals. I include myself as one of those. And then we also have a fantastic communications team that is 3 individuals. And their job is to get the information out as much as we can and to disseminate that information. And I'll give you some more details on where we're going with that. And then as you see there under Southwest Ohio Air Quality Agency, it's broken out into 3 different areas. And I'll give some of the background on that. But really, the mission that we have, it's not really a surprise, but we strive to protect, preserve, and enhance the environmental quality of our communities. So I don't want to spend too much time going through what each of these different organizations do, but it is worth mentioning, because especially Southwest Ohio, the Air Quality Agency, we actually don't just service Hamilton County. We service Butler, Claremont, Clinton, Hamilton, and then Warren County as well. And if you want to look at the history, I'll give a plug here. I recently did the Heart and Hustle podcast with Jeff and Bridget, and I talked a lot about the history. So it is worth listening to. We have a really rich history here at Environmental Services, and it dates all the way back to believe it or not, the late 1800s. And obviously that predates Ohio EPA. So really, the easiest way to explain what that agency does is we are a contractor for Ohio EPA, and we fulfill the requirements on the air side. So when it comes to air quality monitoring, permitting, we provide those services for Ohio EPA, and we coordinate with them on that. And then the Recycling and Solid Waste District, I know Commissioner Driehaus is becoming a lot more familiar with that because she's on our policy committee. But their mission is actually, it's pretty simple. It's actually to reduce the amount of waste that is going to our landfills. So they're looking to do all the things that, reduce, reuse, recycle. A lot of the push that we've been working with lately is on food waste, because 40% of the food that we have, believe it or not, goes to the landfill. So we're always looking for ways to get the message out on that too. And that's more the baby. I joke with them because they were established in 1989, which is nowhere near the late 1800s. And the way they came about is state mandated that each county have a solid waste district to address those concerns. And there are a few where they combine counties, but here in Hamilton County, that's who we serve for that. So to kind of give you a little bit more idea with the Southwest Ohio Air Quality Agency, how we're broken out, It's mainly 3 different areas. So again, I talked about permits. We have a permit section who works with Ohio EPA to prepare those permits, and that is for industry. And as you can imagine, kind of like we were talking with accreditation, it's kind of dry material, but it's very, very detailed. And it takes an engineering mind, it takes a scientific mind to do that. And we have just fantastic people here that do that work. The inspection and compliance, that's more of, beyond the permit writing, we need to make sure people are staying in compliance with the rules and regulations that are set upon them. So that, they actually will go out to the facilities and do inspections. They'll actually respond to complaints. That includes the asbestos regulations. And then the other part of it is the monitoring and analysis, and that's actually just evaluating the air quality. So we have monitors that, we have 19 monitors across those 5 counties where we actually are monitoring that air data real time, and it's available on our website to check that out. Before I go on, I think it's really important because, again, we are kind of a silent department here, but it is worth knowing that we, coming here, I did my research before I came here. I wanted to be a part of an organization that is a leader. I pride myself in being a leader and being innovative, and they do fantastic work here. We have kind of a dichotomy of people who have been here 20 plus years, and then we have a lot of new staff coming in. So it's a really interesting dynamic to where we can have that senior level staff training our newer staff. And my job is to make this a place where we retain that new staff to work here like these senior level people have done for 20 plus years. And we're the leader. So I can tell you Ohio EPA, they look to Southwest Ohio when it comes to anything, and they seek our advice. So I want to continue that, and I think it's worth the commissioners knowing that we are a valued resource here. And the same goes on the recycling and solid waste district side. We're an innovator. I'll give you a couple examples as we go through this where we're the first to do it, and I want to continue that. So we do a great job here, and I'm happy to have Commissioner Driehaus be a part of our policy committee. Commissioner Portune did that for years, and I know he always said that it was his favorite committee that he was a part of. So as far as revenue, and this is the big question everybody always asks, right? Where does your money come from? I will tell you that we are completely restricted funds, so we do not take anything from the general fund. The easiest way to explain it is US EPA and Ohio EPA provide us several grants to fulfill the roles that we need for those programs. And we do have some local permits as well. It's a smaller portion of that pie. And as far as overall, we're a little above 3 million is what revenue we get on the Southwest Ohio. Same thing on the solid waste side. We're right around, like I said, above 3 million. And if you look at that pie chart, you can see the landfill tipping fees is where we get those. But there is like $245. So I asked my operations manager, I'm like, where'd that $245, where'd that come from? And it's kind of interesting. It was COVID related. So there are reimbursements for trainings that we weren't able to attend in 2020. So that actually came in as a separate pot there. And if you have any questions, feel free to chime in anytime. This is a discussion. This is not really for me just to talk. So going back, I kind of wanted to just talk a little bit about focus on how did this impact us with COVID? What did we have to do? And another part that I'm really proud about is that we kind of anticipated this might happen. In fact, I had a couple of employees that said, hey, look what's happening in Italy. We need to prepare for this. So we actually ran, before the stay-at-home order happened, we ran a test of this with our staff about a week and a half before it actually happened. And the good news is it was successful. We got 85% of the staff out of the office. The bad news is we found out pretty quickly our IT was going to need to have some upgrades. We needed to have, because you have to remote into your computer. But we were able to get through that within a week. And so when the stay-at-home order actually hit and we had to send staff home, we were good to go. So, and we've been that way since. I mean, we brought some people back, but we've successfully been able to keep our staff safe. And I'll kind of go through how we've been able to manage that, because as you can imagine, a lot of our work requires people to come into the office and to go out into the field to do this work. But again, we were innovative and we kind of set the standard for the rest of the state as to how we could do this. So air monitoring. Again, we have 19 sites throughout the 5 counties. And what we did was the state told us, they said, look, we don't want you going out to any of those sites beginning March 23rd. And that went all the way up until April 20th. Now, the good news is with technology today, lots of times you can remote into those sites. and make changes if you need to through a computer. But when something goes wrong, kind of like any mechanical thing, you need to actually replace and pull those parts out and put new parts in. We couldn't do that. So unfortunately, and it's just routine maintenance, those things come up where you do have to replace filters and things. So if that happened during that time frame, the unfortunate thing was we couldn't go out to the field to do those updates. However, in April of last year, with working with Ohio EPA, they did allow us to go out to the majority of our sites. And that was because we had critical air data regarding like ozone and particulate matter, where they wanted us to continue to get those samples so we didn't lose that data. And then from there, up until March, we were able to get everything all back online and out and operating. And then the last 2 sites that we had where we weren't actually going out and operating those because there was some contact issues with, say it was at a firehouse where you might come into contact with the firefighters, we got those up and going in March of this year. So as you can imagine, we had a lot of limitations. We had to work with our staff where only one person could go to each site, right, to limit that contact exposure. We, one person per vehicle here. And then we had, when occasionally, like I said, when we'd have to swap parts out, we'd have a 24-hour separation. So what that means is the last time somebody left that site, it had to sit idle for at least 24 hours before the next person could come to allow some of that decontamination, if in fact there was a COVID issue. And of course, we have a laboratory here too, where we're looking at samples. Our laboratory is kind of tight, so we had some issues there too. So the way we got around that was we had our staff rotate and work odd hours to get in and do that work. And as you can imagine, when we went purple back in, I believe it was January of this year, that set us back a couple steps too. And then we got back up and going after that. So that kind of explains what we did on the monitoring side. Now on the testing side, you can imagine that was a real struggle, right? How in the world are we going to be doing our get out and check our facilities and see what they're doing, and are they doing what they need to be doing? So we came up with, again, we were the one who proposed this to both US EPA and Ohio EPA. And at first they said, well, why don't you run a pilot and then get back with us and let us know how it goes? So with all the Zoom and FaceTime and all these other features that we have, Teams, we decided, and you can actually see if you look here on the photos to the right, I don't know if you can see my cursor, this is our staff actually on a Zoom call where what they're doing is they're directing these contractors to make sure that they're implementing the testing appropriately, where normally we'd be on site, but now we could use these tools in order to get that work done. And early on, even these contractors, if you remember, there was a travel restriction. Most of these contractors come from out of state, so they weren't even able to do the work until I think it was summertime when they started doing this. And the other thing you need to do with a stack test, it's actually where you go to the top of what we would just think of as like a chimney, but a tall stack for an industrial facility. And you run this equipment, but you need to be able to see all the operational things that are going on the screen. They can actually show us real time with FaceTime and Zoom what we needed to find. And then over here, you can see them actually taking the samples. So it was a huge success, so much that US EPA and Ohio EPA adopted it and implemented it to all the other agencies throughout the Midwest.
Hmm.
And we did the same thing with asbestos. So we monitor asbestos renovation demolition projects where contractors go in and remove that material. And you can see here, our inspector is actually working with them they're bagging the material and making sure they're removing that asbestos appropriately for that site. So complaints, how did we handle complaints during this time? Because Ohio EPA did not want us going out to sites on complaints. And we understand that, especially with them being under Governor DeWine, that they had to follow their protocol, and us being a contractor, we wanted to make sure we followed their protocol as well. So what we came up with for this was we worked with our complainant. So this, say a citizen called in with a dust complaint. We knew that, hey, we may not be able to go on site, but we may be able to work with that complainant to show us, and it's kind of hard to see in this photo, but this is a piece of paper where we can see the dust accumulating on the paper. And then we can go, and then here's some dust at like a door jamb on their house. And they provided us like some views of maybe some emissions that are in the air that they could see. And then we could go back to that facility, and then we could ask for their information related to dust. We could see what their operations were doing, ask for copies of their records, and then we could do a virtual inspection like I showed you before. So another innovative way to come up with how can we get out and address these citizens' issues when a complaint comes in. And we've had a lot of success on that too. Something else that we did with that, say open burning we deal with, we partnered up with the local fire departments, and we would send the local fire department out to address those open burnings when normally we would be the one going out and doing that. So that was very successful too. And here's where we are now. We actually, this was early on that we did this. Now Ohio EPA has worked with us and they've allowed us to do kind of a tiered approach. So we have 3 tiers to where, based on the severity of potential contact with individuals, we can go out and do that on our own, like as a drive-by, or if a facility we're not going to have any contact. Tier 2, they have to get permission from me, the director here. And in Tier 3, we actually have to get permission from Ohio EPA and agree that it is worth going on site. That would be where you have to go into mechanical room where there's several people and you may not be able to socially distance. And then it's also, this has been a big thing that's been discussed on the meeting. You may have seen there's been several stories lately about pollen and mold. And being, you know, the time of year where pollen is really high, it was critical. We wanted to make sure that this is a service that we provide that we're not required to do. Ohio EPA does not require us to do pollen and mold counting, and neither does US EPA. But our air monitoring and analysis group wanted to provide this to the citizens, so they knew, like, you know, hey, what are the counts? Because believe it or not, this is our #1 hit site on our website that people are checking because so many people suffer from allergies. And we continued this all through COVID. So we actually had people coming in, rotating their schedule, and then taking these counts. And if you didn't hear, March 23rd, so just a few weeks ago, we actually had the highest pollen count that we've had in 20 years. So to give you an idea, we had a count of 9,795, and that's in spores per cubic meter. Anything above 1,000 is considered high. So you could imagine that day was a record-breaking day for us. And we still continue to do this service for pollen and mold. On the recycling and solid waste side, and I know Michelle Baltz, she was big with the CARES team, and I commend her. She's done fantastic work, and I believe she gave you an update back in January. But I did want to make sure I mentioned a few of these things. As she mentioned back then, we became webinar experts, kind of like all of you, right? Now, if you'd asked me what Zoom was a couple years ago, I would have said it was a commercial for Nissan, or I had no idea. But now we're all experts in this. So we did the same thing. We pivoted, and now we do all these trainings and things on the recycling and solid waste district side through webinars. And we've tried several platforms. We could tell you everything about them, and it's been successful. So we're going to have to come up, looking in the future, will we continue to do these? I think what we'll do is we'll do live events, but we'll also offer a recorded webinar as well, give people the option. So that way, if you're in an area where you can't travel to us, or say you're in a low income area where you don't have the transportation to get you to these, this will be an option that's available where you can get online and you can check these, and we're going to try and get these things out as much as we can. So these are examples of different webinars that they did. We did our compost bin sale. We did all that socially distanced. You can see the photo down there. People didn't even get out of their car. We had them open up their hatch, and we would put the compost bin right in the back of their vehicle. That was in the summer of last year. We sold over 600 of those. So it was so successful. We have another one we're going to be doing in May. We also did the household hazardous waste collection and drop off. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a safe way for residents to properly dispose of household hazardous waste. That way they don't throw it in their garbage bins. And we did that as a one-day event, again, contactless, where they could drive through. And you can see an example here of where an individual is taking those materials out, and then we make sure they get disposed of properly. 513 Green, this is another one, like, no one knew we were going to have a pandemic. So we had a big launch plan in 2020 to create a cost-free certification. So we want to acknowledge businesses that do the right thing when it comes to sustainability, right? And reward them and give them a platform to say, hey, they've gone out of their way, whether it be through recycling, water conservation, energy conservation. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. And we went ahead and launched it anyway. And we've actually already had 11 facilities that are 513 Green certified. And of course, we push all this out in social media. The one to the right there is MadTree, just recently got their certification. So we're really happy because MadTree has a strong presence here in the Cincinnati area. And then I know, Madam President, you helped us out in 2019. We've always done awards for our partners and our communities that do fantastic work when it comes to the recycling and the solid waste district. And in 2020, obviously, we couldn't do that. We typically do that on America Recycles Day in November. So what we did this year is we created a digital magazine to show them appreciation and get that out. And we were able to push that out to all of our partners. So again, this is another innovative way we were able to continue to do these programs to acknowledge good work. And moving forward, we realize now this is a nice keepsake for those facilities to have. And some have even framed it and they put it in their business. So when people walk in, they see this. So like if you go to a restaurant or somebody who won an award or a community, they can actually display this along with their trophy and show that. So we're super proud of that as well. And some new recyclables, hopefully you've heard this. Rumpke back in January expanded what can be put in your curbside recycling and the containers. The big one over here with the plastic, they could already do the bottles and jugs, but now they can do tubs. So that would be like your sour cream, your yogurt, fruit containers, those kinds of things. So we're definitely getting the word out on that. And just, this is breaking news, just as of last week, popcorn tins and cookie tins can now be recycled too. So if you want to help support us on that, we'll be happy to get you that information to get that out too. And so again, I wanted to kind of give you an idea. So, the pandemic, obviously we had to, pivot, we had to change our operations, but being a director, I wanted to look at it as the positive side and say, hey, what did this really force us to look at how we do things and how can we do it better moving forward? So I can tell you one area that I realized very early on that we were lacking is our social media. We really needed to up our game when it came to how we promote these programs, especially on the recycling and solid waste district side. So we're working really hard to get those things out, like I was just talking about what can be recycled. So we're really working on a program to increase our social media followers and how many likes we get and all those things and build some momentum. And also, how do we get into communities where maybe we haven't had good recycling rates in the past? So we're also looking at that. Increased video production. I have, my oldest son is 20 years old and everything he gets is from short videos, YouTube, same with my younger children. So we realize that this is a part of the market, or so the promotion that we're not really hitting quite right. And so, and Bridget's been helping us on this too, but we're working on increasing our video production. And then, and I'll show you some examples of that. And then also our branding. We realize, hey, we're kind of dated. We need to figure out how can we get our message out and let people know what we even do here. When you say Hamilton County Department of Environmental Services, a lot of people scratch their head and they're not real sure what we do. And then of course our websites, we needed to do some things with our websites. So here's an example of some ways we're boosting our social media. We're getting our staff more involved. So this is one of our staff members, Steve Damaska, who does the pollen and mold counting, and he does some other things here. But he provided us some fun information about him. And it was nice. I mean, look, it reached 600 people. We got a lot of comments on it. But it's a really good way to kind of humanize us, so to speak, right? Talk about the people who do the great work that we do here. So, and we're going to be doing that on all of our platforms. So these are some of the goals that we've given ourselves. And key elements, how, we have, as anything, we have to track it. How are we going to track success? And then video production. So this was a great video that was produced back in February. This is one of our employees here, Mary Kropenbaker. She's actually going through the basics of recycling, explaining what can and can't be recycled and why. She gives some good tips as to why things can't be recycled. And then here's another one that we just recently did back in March. It's a video relating to glass and how glass gets recycled here locally. And we actually, the guest speaker on that was with Rumpke. And then branding. I mean, I'm not a branding expert, but my communications team is working on this. We're going to be updating our logos. And as Commissioner Driehaus knows, we're even exploring the name, Hamilton County Recycling and Solid Waste District. When you say solid waste, what do you think? Most people think of sewage, right?
I did. I think it's sewage. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I mean, it's just normal. I mean, it's not uncommon that we get calls and people.
I don't know how normal it is.
Not that anything's wrong with sewage, right? I mean, sewage is, as you know, MSD is a big organization that we have to work. But I guess what I'm trying to say is we need to figure out to get a better recognition of who we are and what we do. So we're working on that right now. We're super excited as to how we're going to do that. And then the website. So, I don't want to get too technical on the websites, but really the easiest way to talk about the websites, I would just say that we realized that we need it to be more user-friendly, right? I think they call it, you need to 1 click, 2 clicks now. You're not supposed to have to click 5 or 6 times anymore. Our website wasn't quite there. It needs to be more appealing, more photos, those kinds of things. And it needs to just be more engaging. So we're working on that too. So, and that'll actually be all 3 of those websites. We'll be working on that as well. And that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of where we are, how we've changed over the last year and where we're going.
Thank you so much, Brad. Such hard work. You guys did not miss a beat during this pandemic. It seems like everybody had to adjust, but you guys had hands-on activities that you had to do, and you were able to adjust in the process. So I'll probably open it up over to Commissioner Driehaus, since you are a rep for this environmental. Would you like to add any more words?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'm new to the board. Todd Portune used to love being a member of this board. So I have recently, taken over as the rep for the county commissioners, and I'm delighted to do it. It's a great team. It's very interesting content to be on. Couple of things. One is, as you all advance these programs related to hazardous waste or recycle or whatever it is, composting, please let us know, because I am confident that all 3 of us would be willing to push that out through our offices, as well as what you're doing. So be happy to promote that information. And because I don't know that, I personally did not know about I knew you were doing a hazardous waste drop off, but I didn't know what time of year it was. I didn't know how often it was. And so I really do think there is a lot of opportunity there to kind of spread the word and represent the county at the same time. I have a question for you. I recently read, if my memory serves, that an anaerobic digester is going in down in St. Bernard. And is that a private, that's private initiative down there?
Yes and no. So right now it is private in the sense that they are working to do, it's for industry. And they have opened the door to the future to allow it open to the public. But as of right now, it's only going to be available for the industry in that area. But the capacity is pretty substantial. So we're hoping, and we've been working with them through the process, that eventually they will increase that to where we can divert additional waste to the anaerobic digester.
And remind us what goes into an anaerobic digester.
Well, organics. So what it does is it could be any organic, it could be food waste. In this case, I don't know if there's proprietary information, but they're taking organics from industrial processes, and rather than that go to Rumpke, which it currently does right now, they actually will use it as believe it or not, it's a fuel. When you start breaking it down in an anaerobic environment without oxygen, it actually will create energy, and you can get gas off of that. So there's profit that can be made. So they're doing it because it is good environmentally, but they're also doing it because there's a profit that can be made off of it. So they're looking if they can keep it successful to expand it and move it forward. And it's a good question, because I know the groundbreaking was supposed to be last year, and I believe it got pushed to this year. I think this summer is when it's supposed to begin. But
yeah, I can't remember where I read about it, but I just recently read. Let me ask you one other thing then.
Sure.
So related to that, how do you, or how do they rather, control the smell that is often related with anaerobic digestion?
Yeah, you asked the great question, right? And that was, so it's kind of interesting you asked that question too, Commissioner Driehaus, because I have a unique, being the director of both air and in solid waste, I'm unique in the sense that I definitely support anaerobic digesters, and that we want to have more ability to keep waste out of the landfill, but I also don't want it to have an odor associated with it, right? So it's a completely what's called negative air environment. So what that means is it's under pressure negatively, to where it's almost like a slight vacuum. So that all it goes through a processing, and they actually got an air permit through our office in order to do that. So it is under permitting. So it, where we're concerned would be what happens when a truck goes in and maybe that negative air is lost, or the truck coming in that has the material that might be creating odor. So those are the things that we're concerned about, and we want to make sure that it doesn't create odor as we move forward. But yeah, we had a whole task force, Commissioner Driehaus, to kind of figure out how can we minimize that. And I will tell you that the company who's working on this has been very supportive, and they've worked with us from the very beginning. So we're happy about that.
Okay, yeah, I hope we hear absolutely nothing about this.
Exactly, me too.
Like the odor
That's why I say
and-
us being, sometimes not hearing from us is a good thing, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's always been true from my experience. But I think it's great. I mean, again, it's great to recycle the organic material, but I know that there's an odor associated with that. So I'm glad to hear that you're using up-to-date technology, or rather they are, to try to control that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't hear anything more about it. But thanks for the update.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Reese.
No, I just want to thank Brad for the presentation today, and also the innovative things that you're working on that a lot of us have learned during COVID, how to do business differently. And I can certainly appreciate the branding part as a marketer myself. So I'm glad to see that you're looking at ways in which to reach even, different generations and be able to do it in a way where they receive their information. And the video is a really good concept, because you're absolutely right. If it's not on video now, people don't, they scroll on past it now. So I think those are some cool videos that you, especially the one with the beer in the glass, that is I'm sure that one's doing really well. So just thanks. I appreciate the presentation.
You're welcome. And I'll go ahead and mention it, because I know this board has been very supportive of equity and inclusion. And we are, we're also the first in the state, and I know Commissioner Driehaus knows this because she approved it in the last meeting. We do what's called a 15-year solid waste management plan. It's required under state law to kind of say, it's kind of looks at strategy, like how are you taking care of the waste, and financially, how are you going to take care of these things as we move forward? And we realized that equity and inclusion was a missing piece that's not required in that plan. So we actually, with the policy committee's approval, are going to incorporate that into our plan, our newest plan, which starts this year. So how EPA has been supportive, and I'm hoping it gains momentum, and that the rest of the state, all the other solid waste districts will see that, and then maybe they'll be doing it in the future as well. And we've been working with Robert Bell. I had Robert Bell come to one of my department meetings recently and give an overall, as to what the county's doing. The last 3 years we've been working with him, well, I guess 2.5, he started 19, for our purchasing, and we've made a lot of strides there. But where we still need to work, I think, and I've met with Frank Spataro, is on our hiring. And I think the county's doing a great job under your leadership to address those issues. Because one of the things I've struggled with here in environmental work is how do we get the message out to all groups? As I'm going to need to hire people, I want to make sure that we're not just hiring people at certain schools. So I want to get the message out to all the different groups. That's really, really important to me as we move forward here.
Madam President, can I just add?
Yes.
I just I wanted to thank you for that, because when we talk about environmental and going green, sometimes as it relates to diverse communities, as well as I would say the younger generation, they're growing up in a different society. But when my grandmother lived in the West End, we had the incinerator. I remember going to the incinerator to take the trash. And I was working with Central State when I was president of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus and at the legislature. And I know they've got the land grant status, and they're doing a lot of work with green and environmental stuff. But before Flint, it wasn't like this big, if you had asthma, my grandmother died of asthma. If you have asthma, it's just the way it is. And also understanding the whole concept of environmental services and green services, and because sometimes people feel like it's more expensive to be environmental friendly, and particularly times when people are just trying to, survive. And so if you do something, if you're healthy, if you're trying to buy healthy food, or if you're trying to go green, or if you're trying to do something more environmental friendly, it's a cost. So I just think having you focus something on that, I think would be great. I think that's been a missing thing for some time at the statewide level. And I'm glad to see you taking a leadership role in that and being able to discuss these issues openly, honestly, and from a very real perspective that a lot of people are dealing with culturally. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Brad, for coming. Certainly appreciate your presentation and all the work that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sorry, I still had the share screen on. I didn't realize that till just now.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. All righty. So we'll move forward. And when I say move forward, I'll ask our commissioner, my fellow commissioners, or my madam commissioners, if they have anything they'd like to add, any comments as it relates to our meeting today, or anything you'd like to share. Vice President Reese.
Yes, Madam President, I just wanted to share, many know by now that the CDC moratorium on evictions, that I guess our Hamilton County Courthouse has found some loophole where that does not have to be honored. It was given to us at the last second. Our board in our county, and I want to thank our clerk of courts who brought it to our attention, Abtab Pureval, on Good Friday. And I just thought that was, something at a time when we as a commission, a board, and a county, we're working together, we're breaking down silos, we're trying to move as quickly, we're approving CARES Act funding, trying to get the funds, we have the funds, and to have that happen to us in a silo certainly was very hard, and almost a slap in the face to a lot of the work that we have been doing as a county. As a result of that, I know that their legal aid is working legally to try to work within the courts to see if they could do anything. But at the meantime, I think it got down to maybe 179 people by way of the clerk of courts, 179 people who were at risk. And I just want to say we were invited to a press conference. I know your chief of staff was there, Madam President, and I participated. And one of the things that I indicated was that, could we put together a quick strike team with the sheriff, the clerk of courts, our JFS, to try to go to the people proactively, to deliver, just like they would deliver a summons to go to court, but to be able to deliver the help that we have available. And so I just want to commend the administration that was put together. And I think we're going to be talking a little bit about it a little bit later this afternoon with the sheriff and the clerk of courts. But I want to say that they've already started with people inside the courtroom again. They're sitting there. I think we were able to save at least 3 families yesterday, from what I'm told from JFS, by being in the courts with them. First class mail will be going out to these individual homes, as well as the sheriffs will be going out proactively, delivering help, information with help where people can call right away. And I want to also acknowledge Charles Tassel from the Apartment Association, because we need to make sure that the landlords will, sign up to, because you got to sign up in order to receive the check. And I want to say, JFS has been very responsible. The money goes directly to the landlords. It's not going to individuals. Someone had asked that question. And if there's anyone out there that's watching or knows someone who needs rental assistance or utility assistance, we have our new website, the 513relief.org. And you could go on there if you don't. So people say, I'm embarrassed, I don't want to go downtown to the place. Well, you don't have to go downtown. You can apply right there on our website that we rolled out as a board, and you can apply right there, or you could call Jobs and Family Services today at 946-1000. And I want to commend Tim and his team, because everyone that I know that we've sent over there, they have gotten back with them and been able to help. So just want to say we're working as quickly it's possible to save those 179 people. And I think the savable, 179 people, we can get the information to them. We should hopefully have a report back. I know Jeff may want to comment on this, have a report back on how many people we were able to help. But I just wanted to let you know that, and I will continue to be working with and I want to thank Sheriff McGuffey because when I brought this idea, she said, yes, I mean, this is what we're talking about. We say police community relations, having the sheriffs come and deliver something to help the people to their homes. And she said since her time, she had never recalled this being done like this before. So, and I want to thank also the clerk of courts and JFS. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know time is running of essence for a lot of people, and just want to make sure they knew about the website, they knew about the phone number. If they need any help, we've got folks ready to help, and they're moving very quickly. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse, any comments?
No, nothing today.
Okay. I'd like to speak to what Vice President Reese has said. Of course, evictions and rental assistance is a priority of the board. It has been for quite a while, even before we were getting the CARES Act funding and the additional monies that are coming in. And so Tim has actually been working on the list about 3 weeks ago. He started working on the list, and I'm glad that he's able to pump it up and continue on the list. I'm also happy that we were able to reduce the list to 159 people versus the 800 people. So I was really happy to hear about that. I think one concern I have, and I don't know how we can tackle this, is as Commissioner Reese was saying, how the sheriffs are going out with their summons and all. If there's some way, I don't know if administration can do it or how we can do it, to notify people that there'll be sheriffs coming out with a piece of paper. My concern is safety issues and the fact that if you go to a home and I don't know, maybe they're on probation or whatever it might be, and you see a sheriff coming to your home, you're not thinking that they're coming in good favor. You may think, oh, they caught me, or what am I, why are they here? So I'm just wondering if there's a way we can advertise to let people know when you see the sheriff coming to your door with a paper, it's a good thing, hopefully maybe not for everybody, but to let that be known in the county that they will be going out. So I don't know if we've already done that or not.
Yeah, Madam President, I just want to add one more thing. Now, remember, these 179 people who will be receiving a summons to be evicted. These aren't just people that are on the list. So the sheriffs will probably be going out to summons them to court anyway. What we're saying is not just have a summons, but to have, here's where you could call to get help is one of the ways, but it's not the only way. That's one of the ways they're going to go to the people. The other way is we've got first class mail, like you said, that that JFS is doing. The problem is we're not sure if the mail will get there quicker than you being summoned to court. And then we have people that if you do get summoned to court when you're in court, then we'll have people there as well. So, but Sheriff McGuffey is going to talk about that this afternoon. And so maybe that will help get the word out, like you said.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that comment. My thing is that people are not expecting sheriffs to come to their door. And so I'm just saying, if we can be proactive to let the county residents know that this is going on, and that sheriffs may come to your door if you've been listed on the eviction court. So that's just a suggestion that I had, however we can do that, because I'd hate for it, a positive thing not to, continue to be positive. Okay, anything else? All right, Jeff, did you have anything?
No, nothing further today, Madam President.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Commissioner Summer Dumas,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
Yes.
Commissioner Dreehouse.
Yes.